Hi, my name is Amina. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., and I was diagnosed with stage 4B Hodgkin's lymphoma in August of 2021. I am a professional dancer, and I live in New York City now, so that is my 9 to 5, I guess you could say. Dance is my number one love, my number one passion, and it's also what I do for fun. I think my friends would say that I'm a bubbly person. I'm definitely very friendly. And when I'm out with my friends, I'm very outgoing. I like to have a good time, um, try new things, new experiences. And I think above all else, I always like to show up for my friends and like the people I love and who love me. I really believe in loyalty and having each other's back. When I first found out I was sick, I was in my final semester of training. I went to the Ailey School for 4 years, and it's like conservatory style training, pretty much at the highest degree, preparing you for a professional career as a performer. And it was also after COVID, so it was like the fall of 2020, um, and everything was really messed up. We were in masks. Everyone thinks that a cold could be COVID. You could be getting sick, and so I had been feeling off for a while, but I just chucked it up to, oh, it's flu season. It's COVID. I just have to quarantine. But then when I went back into school in my regular routine of taking like 5 classes a day, I found that I was super fatigued at the end of the day, and not just like regular tired, but like I couldn't go up one flight of stairs. And in New York City, like you're walking everywhere all the time. I have to walk up the stairs in my apartment building, walk up the stairs to go to the subway. And there were some days where I felt like I was going to pass out. And so I was like, that doesn't feel right. So that was red flag number 1. The second red flag was I had night sweats. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, my clothes were drenched, my bed sheets were wet, and I would always joke and say it felt like menopause, but I was 21 years old, so I was like, this is not menopause, but why am I getting hot flashes in the middle of the night? And then the third red flag was I had little to no appetite. And whenever I did eat, my stomach would swell and distend so much. Like it would be like I had cereal in the morning and you would think I went to an all-you-can-eat buffet. And then I have to go to class and be in ballet in a leotard and tights with a bloated stomach, and it just felt awful. That was really hard, honestly, because I felt like I had to fake like everything was okay. I didn't really have an explanation at that time as to why I felt awful or why I felt uncomfortable. As a young dancer, I was struggling with a lot of body dysmorphia, and then having to stand in an hour and a half class in front of the mirror, and all I had was like a cereal for breakfast, and here I'm bloated and my clothes don't fit me right. I feel uncomfortable, but I still have to go through my day pretending like everything is okay, and I have to show up and give the teacher energy. There was even one moment where I did this photo shoot, and the photographer was kind of frustrated with me because I was very quiet, kind of timid, and it was coming through in the photos. When in reality, I just was exhausted. I felt tired, and everything about being in that space was draining in the moment. And it was tough because my job and what I was doing in school is so physical, and there's no way to like dial it back. I either have to push through and push myself to the limit, which often happened, and that's how I got hospitalized, um, or give up. And I'm not really good at giving up. It was a lot of trial and error. So I didn't have a primary care physician. I was there for school, so I just relied on minute clinics. Um, but the one doctor I had a good relationship with was my OBGYN. And a lot because of the stomach pain, and it was kind of, um, I felt a lump in my pelvis. So I thought, oh, this might be a cyst. So I went to her, um, and she recommended getting an ultrasound and doing blood work, and that's when we found that my blood was off the charts. And so then she passed me along and was pretty much like, this is out of my jurisdiction. However, I highly recommend you get an MRI and take this to a hematologist. And that then led to months and months of trying to get appointments, because this is 2021, right after COVID. So getting a doctor's appointment was really hard in the city. And I learned that if you're not 22, you're still considered pediatric. Um, so I was making appointments at grown-up doctors' places because I thought I was a grown-up, and then they would get canceled because my insurance was like, actually, no, she's still a kid, so you got to go to the children's hospital. So that, I think that led to a lot of delays in diagnosis, because I wasn't officially diagnosed till July, and I started in February. I ended up having to take matters into my own hands and get an MRI at like out of network clinic, and that's when they found the inflamed lymph nodes. Um, but from there, like, I had to wait another month or two for a biopsy appointment, and in between that time, my symptoms got increasingly more aggressive, and so I ended up being hospitalized. And that's when they told me, yeah, you might have cancer. Everybody seemed to have a clue that I possibly had lymphoma, except for me, because I actually didn't know what that was. So everyone was kind of on high alert, and then I had a fever of 104 one night, and so my partner Jorge took me to the emergency room. It was a very fast moving process, just because everything took so long, that we kind of tapped into our family and friends resources. So I was very fortunate that my mom had a cousin who worked at Johns Hopkins, and she helped with kind of speeding along the process of me getting an appointment and getting all of my pathology from New York passed along to the hospital in DC so that I can be seen and treated quicker. So I was very fortunate in that sense. And then when I met my oncologist, his name is Dr. Kressel, he was kind of like the first doctor who really validated how I felt. Um, I mentioned earlier, like, they kept saying you might have lymphoma, and the whole hesitancy to be transparent with me was that I was young, and they didn't want to be negative or dampen the mood too soon without having all the answers. And I understand that perspective. However, for me, I felt like I was dying. And then to say that, oh, it might not be anything that serious, kind of sucked, because it was like, am I going crazy? And I knew I wasn't, but he was the first one to just look at me and be like, yes, you are very sick. Yes, this is 100% lymphoma. We're getting your pathology. However, you're checking all the boxes, and we need to get you started next week. I was very emotional, just because it was kind of a relief to have an answer. Um, and I remember like having a little bit of jitters or like goosebumps, um, because it's a tough reality to face that you have cancer. However, on the flip side, it was nice to have an answer to all the questions that I had swirling around in my head for months. You know, it's like, oh no, you're not just immunocompromised. This isn't some like COVID or flu. Like, this is exactly what it is. Here's how we're going to treat it. And just having that clarity helped me find peace, oddly enough. I know it's like you're going into like probably the hardest thing you're ever going to have to do in your life, and that some people don't even have to face, thankfully. And yet I felt more calm having that clarity. It's rough. Like, chemo sucks. It literally just zaps you of any energy. However, in the beginning, I think after my third cycle, I was tired but feeling better. And so it was like, okay, this is the necessary evil that we have to go through in order to get cured. So it's just hard, especially the treatment plan that I had included a specific chemo that is gonna cause bone pain, or another that makes you lose all your hair. Another side effect was I developed neuropathy in my feet, which later down the line was a tough part of the recovery, especially since I need them for my profession. It's tough because I felt like I was losing parts of myself in a sense. I didn't have any energy. I didn't want to socialize with people. I kind of just wanted to be alone after my infusion days. But then on my off weeks, because I would get treatment for once a week and then I would have a week to recover. On my off weeks, I felt a little better every time. Like, every off week, I was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So in the moment, it's not fun at all, but then the results are worth it. I was fortunate enough to be outpatient, so I would be in the hospital for like a full work day, let's say 6 or 8 hours a day. And then my dad or my mom, whoever was there with me, would take me home and I would rest at home. I was the only young person in the infusion ward. Whenever I would go, people always thought my dad was the patient, but he was bald by choice. I wasn't. So that felt isolating. And beyond that, like, I had just finished school in New York. I was building my own life. I just got my own apartment. And then I had to leave it all behind and go back home. So in a lot of ways, it felt like I was going backwards in time, like going back to square one. And for a little bit, it did break my spirit. Like, I felt defeated. And so I relied a lot on just finding ways to entertain myself and fill my time. And being Gen Z and in my 20s, like, it was TikTok and Instagram. Like, that was my coping mechanism. But what I think was unique about me being a young person with cancer is I made the choice not to suffer in silence. And so I told my friends about it. I posted on social media about it. And through that, I was able to find a community of people going through similar experiences at my age. Even though they weren't physically there with me, I found them online. Especially when I was in treatment, I was connecting with a lot of people, asking about my experience, asking for advice for themselves, for loved ones, even if they didn't have cancer, that they were dealing with some sort of health issue. And they were like, well, how did you push through? I think by sharing my experience, it kind of opened a can of worms on the fact that a lot of young people, regardless of a cancer diagnosis or not, have this issue where we kind of slip through the cracks of the healthcare system, whether it's we're still on our parents' insurance and we're still treated as kids even though we handle all of our own finances and do things on our own, or we just got booted off our parents' insurance and now we're like, what do we do? I also found like a lot of other nonprofits that service women like me or young people like me who feel isolated and connect them to each other. So I don't know, it's like what I thought was just me venting turned into a form of advocacy. And so when I saw that there was this interest and this need for connection, I just stuck with it. And I've met so many beautiful people because of it. I just didn't know. So by sharing, it hopefully gives others information so that they are more informed and knowledgeable and feel empowered to speak up for themselves and not just take things in blindly. I have an amazing, amazing family that really came together to support me during this time. And even our community in DC that showed up, like my parents' friends who supported them, because I think it's really important that the caregivers also receive that support. When I don't have the energy to greet people, like they were still there for my mom and my dad, which made me really happy because they're struggling with this too. Even though I'm the one who's actually receiving the medication, they emotionally are invested financially and sacrificing their time to be there for me. So I'm glad that they also receive that support. And then I think most importantly, I really saw who my friends were. Being in New York, there's like millions and millions of people here, and I like to talk to people. I like to make friends and hang out. But I had friends who took me to a resort while I was waiting to get my pathology report. Because we had a vacation plan. This is my friend Makala. We had a vacation plan, and I was like, girl, I'm sick. I can't go. Like, I have cancer. And she's like, well, what are you doing in the weeks that we were going? I was like, just gonna cry in my bed at home. I don't know. She's like, no, we're gonna go. And she took me to the Dominican Republic on vacation. Survivorship, or Thrivership, as I like to say, honestly just looks like finding my happy. I try to find happiness and joy in any scenario, and kind of to what I said before, just living and loving life to the fullest, not putting any limitations on myself. Taking care of my health physically, mentally, emotionally, protecting my energy. I've found that I don't need to please people. I don't need to overextend myself. I don't need to do things that I don't want to do, or that don't serve me. And yeah, I think surviving cancer taught me that. And a lot of people say, wow, Mina, like, I feel like you've grown so much. And I was like, well, I just got a reality check, I got a true sense of what really matters and how I want to spend my time on this earth. The sky isn't even the limit anymore, because I've been faced with my own mortality, and I thought that it was gonna be cut short at 20 something. Now it's like, okay, I'm 26 now, and I have a whole lifetime ahead of me. I'm going to do everything I can possibly do. It started off every other month, then every 3 months, and now every 6 months. Everything's been good so far, and I think, my doctor's just been conservative with the checkups, because I'm not doing it with a PET scan, which I think is the traditional way, but that's because of how advanced my cancer was. I wasn't I didn't have the luxury to do any fertility preservation, so he wants to limit my exposure to radiation as much as possible. It was shortly after I had finished chemo. He started experiencing symptoms, and then he was actually diagnosed almost exactly a year after I had finished. He had AML, acute myeloid leukemia. He chalked it up to he's just getting older. um, but I always mention this because oddly enough, it's like I went through all the hardship I had to go through in order to be able to help him. Because AML in your 60s could be a death sentence. And thankfully, there's been a lot of development and research into it so that it's treatable now. But I can't imagine what it would have been like if he had to jump through 6 months of hoops like I did. When in our case, he called me, told me what was going on, was kind of asking my thoughts on it and sharing, his experience. And I just texted my doctor and was like, hey, can I send you my dad's charts because it looks kind of like scarily similar to what I had. Can he come and see you? And the next week he was able to go in. Some people are like, I would be so upset. Like, how can you stay so positive when all this is happening back to back to back? And I just took it as what I went through was not in vain, because it's literally helping my father right now get the treatment he needs and what he deserves. And now he's still here and he's in remission. And, being in remission and being a survivor doesn't mean everything's all rainbows and sunshine. But we both made it through. So for that, I'm grateful. Even when it's hard, it does get better, and you don't necessarily have to rely on things outside of yourself to make it better. I think finding what brings you joy, finding what brings you calm is the most important thing, even when you're going through the hardest or scariest time of your life. I think specifically for AYA cancer patients or young people in general, setting this deadline or checklist for yourself on when and how things need to be accomplished is actually hindering you from going for it. I think I had this set plan. I was going to go to this school, graduate, get into this company, complete these things, all of these things by this time. And when it doesn't happen, you feel defeated. You feel like you've lost, when in reality, it could just be a few more steps away and you just have to keep going. In the arts industry, but in life in general, I feel like we're all on a queue, and you either decide to stay in the line and see it through, or you get out right before the thing you've been dreaming of is about to happen. So youth is a blessing, but we also don't need to accomplish everything right away. And if we stick to it, find our happy, keep fighting, then everything you put your energy into, you will achieve.